I grew up in a small Texas town where you're taught to trust in God's plan. And I did, all the way up until I was 19. That's when I left Texas forever. But how I died and what really happened, nobody knows that but me. I've always loved Texas. It's so big, so beautiful. And for the first part of my life, I was so happy here.
Ashley was a great kid. She had an outgoing personality. She laughed all the time.
When I was 15, my friends and I thought it was real funny to ride on top of moving cars. But the laughter stopped the night I almost died.
Ashley was doing what, lots of kids her age were doing, and she fell off of a car and fractured her skull.
I guess it wasn't my time, because after 2 surgeries, I woke up from my coma and got a second chance at life.
It was just like she was a child, a baby. She had to relearn everything. She couldn't tie her shoes, she couldn't get dressed by herself, she couldn't take a shower by herself.
Sometimes, I wish God had let me die. It's hard being a teenager when your head's all messed up. Still, I tried my very best and even graduated with my high school class.
At age 19, she was attending a junior college and taking night courses. And she was living on her own in her own little apartment.
Ashley wanted to show everybody that she could take care of herself. But after her accident, Ashley was a very trusting soul. She really, honestly believed the good in people and would do anything anybody told her.
I used to think I could trust everyone, but that accident changed the way I saw things.
She didn't think about any kind of consequences to her actions, which is, part of the brain injury.
4 years after my accident, I got into a little trouble with a boy I shouldn't have.
When I found out Ashley was pregnant, I was very angry. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, she's only 19. That's not very old to be having a child. And I told her I wasn't happy about this at all, and so we didn't speak for a couple of days.
It was a pretty tense time. I just kept telling Ashley, you know how your mom is, give her a couple days, let her think about it, let her digest it all, and it'll be fine.
My mom couldn't stay mad at me for long. I was her little girl.
After a few days, I tried to call her, and she didn't answer. I sent her a couple of emails. She didn't respond. So I had decided that after work, I was going to go run by her apartment and check on her. I arrived at Ashley's complex. I'm knocking on the door and saying, Ashley, open the door, it's me. And there was no response. And I put the key in the door. And I walked in, and I turned my head, and I could see her lying in bed. And I knew that it was bad, that she had died.
God had almost let me die once. This time, I wasn't so lucky. Suddenly, I was the center of attention. The police wanted to know if this was a murder. There were a whole lot of questions and a lot of people looking for answers.
When I arrived at the scene and I saw the body on the bed, I saw the pillowcase, and didn't see any apparent wounds on the body.
It wasn't long before those same investigators started wondering if I had taken my own life.
We noticed a green cord with tassels on the end. It appeared as though she tied the cord to the bed, laid down in the bed, and just applied pressure to her neck, which would cause asphyxiation.
Ashley, after the accident, would get very depressed, and she was on antidepressants. If she was on her medications, she was happy, and if she wasn't on her medication, she was very sad.
My life had been changing so fast. And sometimes my thoughts had gotten real dark.
Of course, the first big worry was, how is she going to take care of this baby? It was going to be a long, hard road for her, but it wasn't the end of the world. It was going to be okay.
I was scared to keep taking all those antidepressants with a baby growing inside me. So I stopped all of them.
The search of the scene revealed empty prescription pill bottles. Some have suicidal warnings.
Ashley would not have harmed this baby. She wouldn't have harmed herself. She just wouldn't have done that.
Investigators found a note that I had written and tried to figure out what it all meant.
We found a handwritten note on the floor, and according to her mother, that was Ashley's handwriting, and it was Ashley expressing she was pregnant and that her parents were not in favor of her being pregnant, and the note just told about all the depressing things going on in her life.
These are the words I wrote. My mom isn't going to be there for me, or so she says. I hate that with a big passion. I doubt I can handle this on my own. I wish that all the feelings would just go away and I can be happy again.
It hurt me that she felt so alone. And I blamed myself a lot too, because had I been a little more supportive maybe, then she wouldn't have felt so bad.
My impressions swayed from the homicide theory to suicide just based on the totality of circumstances we found in the apartment.
Maybe those investigators believed that I died suffering alone, but almost nobody knows what really happened. Except for me, and maybe Sweetie. I never liked living alone, so I got a big old cat to keep me company. I called her Sweetie, because she was the sweetest thing I ever knew.
Sweetie was her baby. Instead of being alone and being lonely, she did have Sweetie there with her.
Even in my death, Sweetie never left my side. She saw what nobody should ever have to see. If she could only talk, she could tell investigators the truth about that letter.
And you said there was nothing specific in the note that she left.
The note was another factor that just led me to believe that, okay, we're dealing with a depressed person.
I wish those investigators could have realized. Sometimes the things people don't say are more important than the things they do.
Nowhere in that note did it say, I'm going to kill myself. What it said was, I'm depressed, my mom's upset with me, I'm pregnant. And I continued to tell them that things didn't add up and that I didn't think it was a suicide.
You should always listen to a girl's mom. She knows her child better than anyone. And my mom knew some things just didn't make sense.
She always had the ceiling fan on. She always had the TV on. The minute I opened the door, I noticed the ceiling fan was not on, the TV was not on. And we were going through her things in her apartment, and I found her keychain.
The key to her apartment was gone. And we kept thinking, where could it be? Her door was locked, and why would that one key be gone?
The missing apartment key to me meant somebody had to have had that key.
My feelings were that the key could have been easily lost. It's not unusual for a parent to be in denial that their child could take their own life.
It's hard to change your mind when it's set on something. And it doesn't help when even forensic science seems to back you up.
I was not surprised to learn that it was going to be ruled a suicide.
I questioned them over and over. I don't understand how you think this could have happened the way it did. And their reply was, this happens all the time. And I said, no, not with my daughter, it doesn't.
There was no DNA evidence recovered. There were no ligature marks on her hands, nothing to indicate there would have been any kind of physical struggle. I closed the case and moved on to other cases.
But those investigators had it wrong. I hadn't killed myself. Sometimes, though, guilt is more powerful than the law. You always hear about the special mother-daughter bond, and my mom and I really did stick together like glue.
Wherever you saw me, she was right there with me. She was attached at the hip.
My mom would never leave me alone forever, just like I would never leave without saying goodbye.
I had Ashley cremated because I couldn't bury my child. Because I needed her to be with me.
At the memorial service, Renee would say, well, they say she killed herself, but I know she didn't. And I kept thinking, my poor, poor sister is in denial. And I was really so afraid that my sister would be mad at me because I saw her last.
People I didn't even know were sending me cards wishing me well, and kept in touch with a couple of Ashley's friends.
About a month after I died, my mom even got a phone call from my old high school boyfriend, Dan Leach.
At the time that Dan called, I asked him, I thought you were in the military somewhere. And he said he had been, but that he had been discharged and he was back home. He seemed concerned that he wasn't able to reach her and was wondering where she was, thought maybe she moved back home, maybe. So I told him what had happened, and he said he was sorry and he didn't know.
Come on, Dan. Do you really mean that? Mom thinks you're such a nice guy, just like I did once.
I said, we'll keep in touch and maybe we can all go to lunch one day.
I thought, I'm so glad that he cared enough about her to make that call, and Renee was very happy to hear from him.
Mom shouldn't have been so glad to hear from Dan, but there was no one to tell her the truth.
I missed her so much, and I still, you know, to this day, it still seems unbelievable that it's happened. I talk to her all the time. It'd be great if she would respond to me, but...
Even though I couldn't talk back to my mom, she wouldn't give up on me.
I felt like it was me against the world. You know, I was bound and determined to try to get the police to see it in a different light.
She knows the reasons why the case was closed as a suicide, but her instincts as a mother told her it was something else.
There were some really bad times where I just didn't think I was going to make it myself.
But maybe there's some kind of divine plan that guides us. And my old boyfriend, Dan Leach, was about to become a big believer.
About 2 months after Ashley's death, on a Sunday afternoon, I got a call at home from my sergeant. She informed me that a young man had addressed his church and he asked his congregation to pray for him.
I guess Dan knew he was going to need a lot of prayers when folks found out what he did. The church can forgive a lot of sins, but when Dan Leach asked his congregation to pray for him, he was asking an awful lot.
I was stunned when Dan Leach walked into this door and confessed to a murder. I didn't know Dan Leach even existed in this case.
I received a call from Detective Kubrick, and he wanted to know if I knew Dan Leach. And I said, yes, I did. I said, why? And Detective Kubrick said, well, he's confessed. And I said, to what? And he said, to murdering Ashley. I was just overwhelmed. I couldn't believe what he said because I would have never assumed that he could do anything like this.
Dan graduated high school. He was involved in ROTC. He left that and joined the Air Force. Dan has pretty much lived his life on the straight and narrow.
Boys like Dan don't always get the most attention. So at first, investigators thought it might all be a hoax.
In cases in the past, there have been people that confessed to murders they did not actually commit.
But when Dan sat down and started talking, the truth about my death finally started coming out.
Dan, can you tell me why you're here today?
Yes, sir. I'm here to confess to the murder of Ashley Nicole Wilson.
Dan knew that Ashley wasn't the same person after the accident. He knew she could be manipulated. So that night when you knocked on the door, that was your intention, was to committing a homicide? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, sir.
Go on and tell them, Dan. Tell them about the plan you had all along.
I told her that we'd go through this trust exercise. I had her use a pillowcase. It was the barrier that I needed to grab the weapon of opportunity, which was a cord or a tassel about 3 feet long that I would use to strangle her.
That pretty green cord was part of my graduation gown.
Once I had my arm around her, I wrapped the cord all the way around and I held it.
Dan was smart. He made it look like I strangled myself. He even thought of taking my key so he could lock the door when he left. Dan had a plan for everything, even down to my own suicide note.
I knew that she was down and depressed, so after much persistence on my part, she agreed to go ahead and write some things.
I trusted you, Dan. I wanted you to take care of me and the baby. But you made sure we'd go away forever.
What were your feelings about the pregnancy?
I was concerned. She claimed that it was mine, and I believed her.
We shared one secret night together. Now I wish I could take it all back.
What was your motive to kill Ashley?
I was not willing to share that child with her. I was embarrassed by her.
Dan was wrong to judge me, but I guess in the end, he figured out he'd be judged too.
This movie that just came out recently, The Passion of Christ, I knew that I couldn't continue on the path that I was on because God was not on that path with me.
Confession is about making right with God, but it doesn't always make it right with everyone else.
Dan wanted to cleanse his soul. He did this for himself. He certainly didn't do it for me, and didn't do it for Ashley.
Dan knew that someday he'd have to stand before God. But first, he had to stand before a jury.
The media was so concerned with the Passion of the Christ and with Dan, and this precious baby got lost in all of it.
Dan decided to plead guilty. If Dan hadn't come forward and confessed to Ashley's murder, the chances are this case would probably still be closed.
My mom never gave up on me. Not once in my whole life. Not even after my death.
Dan took my heart. The justice is that he's behind bars, and he won't do this to anyone else. And Ashley is just an angel in heaven, looking down at us and just as happy as she can be.
How did we end up as strangers here?
Life never seems to work out the way you planned. It sure didn't for me. Probably not for Dan either. But since most of us have just one life to live, I guess in the end, you just have to trust that wherever you are is right where you're meant to be.
You blew out the candles and counted